This is my TNA Bound for Glory 2009 pay-per-view predictions. The pay-per-view is live tomorrow night exclusively on pay-per-view. Gotta say, for a TNA pay-per-view, and not only even a TNA pay-per-view, but a wrestling pay-per-view of this year, this card for this pay-per-view, at least on paper, it looks like this possibly might be one of the best pay-per-views from TNA in a long time, and possibly if some of the matches deliver to the expectations that I think they should, this possibly could be one of the best pay-per-views of the year as far as mainstream wrestling goes. That would be in TNA. This should be a good pay-per-view, at least on paper. On paper, it looks very good. Really, the only thing that looks bad or doesn't look good at all is the Legends title match, and I don't think that's going to be given too much time. And I know some people, no matter which way the main event goes, I think AJ Styles and Sting, it's going to be a great match. I think these two should put on a very good match. Now, is it going to hurt it if Sting walks out as champion yet again at Bound for Glory? Yeah, it will hurt it a little bit, but I think the card is so good that even though that would hurt it a little bit for me, it wouldn't hurt it as bad as some other years because actually the whole card for this pay-per-view looks pretty damn good. And the one thing I'm glad that TNA is doing for this pay-per-view is doing a live pre-show. This is one thing that TNA needs to do more frequently. They need to do this for every single pay-per-view because doing a live pre-show is one of those things that kind of at least distinguishes yourself from WWE. It makes you seem a little different because WWE doesn't do any of the live pre-shows or Sunday Night Heats or anything like that anymore. And TNA needs to do this more frequently and not just do it at, Lockdown, Slammiversary, and Bound for Glory. I think this is something they need to do on every single pay-per-view. It gives them a little more time for the pay-per-views. They can, do a match. Say if they got, 8 matches normally they would do on a pay-per-view, they could throw one of those matches on the pre-show so you can give the other matches more time on the pay-per-view portion, and you can kind of, hype the crowd up on the pay-per-view, and it's kind of one of those things I think going into a pay-per-view, doing a live pre-show, I think it comes off pretty good, and I actually think TNA needs to do this more often, and like I said, they need to do this probably every single pay-per-view. But I understand sometimes, when you do a live pre-show, that's 30 more minutes of live television. Might cost a little more money sometimes to do 30 more minutes of live television instead of, just throwing in, telling the pay-per-view companies just to air this, 30-minute, hype-up special for the pay-per-view. So I kind of understand sometimes why they do it for, cost-effective reasons. It does make sense, but it would be good to see it on every single TNA pay-per-view. And the pre-show match for the pay-per-view looks pretty good. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be the Motor City Machine Guns of Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley versus Consequences Creed and Jay Lethal Consequences. And this should be a good match. Now, obviously, since this is on the pre-show, they're not going to give it an extremely long amount of time, but I think it will be given a good amount of time, maybe like 8 to 10 minutes, kind of like an Impact tag match you would expect from these two teams, but it'd be very fast-paced, good back-and-forth action you probably see in this match. And both teams have very good chemistry with each other, so I think this should be a good match, and it's definitely going to be one of those matches that on the pre-show will hype up the crowd for the regular portion of the pay-per-view. Now, not sure what the first match of the live pay-per-view portion is going to be. TNA on their website, they've got it listed as the Beautiful People versus Taylor Wilde and Sarita for the TNA Knockouts Tag Team Championships, but they might possibly open the pay-per-view up with the Ultimate X match, because they kind of do that sometimes at Bound for Glory, open the pay-per-view up with the Ultimate X match, or when they do the Ultimate X match, sometimes they open it up at the beginning of the pay-per-view. But the one thing you got to think of, the pre-show match is kind of like an X Division match, so do you want to necessarily put 2 X Division matches back-to-back, even though that's a pre-show match and this is a pay-per-view match, but still it seemed like you're putting 2 of the same type of matches back-to-back. You'd be like putting 2 women's matches back-to-back, even if the 2 women's matches are great. You don't want to put them back-to-back, so it'd be interesting to see what they put as the opener. So I'm just going with it, what TNA has on their website. Taylor Wilde and Sarita defending the TNA Knockouts Tag Team Championships against the Beautiful People of Madison Rain and Velvet Sky, and this should be a good match. I thought this was a decent tag match at last month's TNA pay-per-view. Just the one thing with that match, they kind of ended a little too quick. They probably should have been given a little more time. Hopefully this time they get a little more time within the ring and it will turn out a little better, because I think it was a little hot-shotted last month on pay-per-view. It ended way too quick, and they were they were about to get to the level of having a very good match with each other. And thankfully, it's Madison Rayne and Velvet Sky, and not Lacey Von Erich being a part of the tag team for the Beautiful People. Obviously, she will be out there at ringside, and I feel that they will give the TNA Knockouts Tag Team Championships to Madison Rayne and Velvet Sky of the Beautiful People. They do need to win this match because even though they haven't really lost anything within TNA, or they haven't really gone down at all, with Angelina Love not being there anymore, it kind of does hurt them as a team. They kind of somewhat need to reestablish themselves, and winning TNA Knockouts Tag Team Championships, that would help them. And I do see them winning the TNA Knockouts Tag Team Championships. It would be kind of, I guess, to an extent, it's kind of questionable changing them, since you just had Taylor Wilde and Sarita win them at the No Surrender pay-per-view just almost less than a month ago, and you already going to probably change hands with the pay-per-view with the titles. But it probably should be a good match. Just like I said, if they give it a little more time than what they did last month, it should be a pretty enjoyable match. And the next matchup will be the only match on this pay-per-view that doesn't look good at all, and this is Hernandez versus Eric Young versus Kevin Nash for the TNA Legends Championship. Now, this match right here, this is something that should, just be on Impact. It's not really pay-per-view worthy. Obviously, they're doing the Hernandez and Eric Young thing, so I guess they kind of have to put that on pay-per-view. And obviously, Nash probably wants to, have his little pay-per-view payday right here from TNA, and he is a, recognizable name. So I guess it kind of makes somewhat sense throwing this match on here, but hopefully it's as short as possible, because the longer this match goes on, the worse it's going to be. If it's a very short match, like 5 to 8 minutes, and they end it very quick, it might be at least watchable. The more it drags on, the worse it's going to get. And I feel Hernandez is going to win this match, and he is going to win the Legends Championship. Not that that's going to do much for him, but he will win it, because Eric Young has kind of been getting the upper hand on Hernandez for a little while now. So I feel Hernandez will go over and win the Legends Championship within this match. Like I said, the shorter it is, the better it will turn out, and it might at least be watchable. But it's probably one of the matches on this pay-per-view that no one cares about at all. Then the next matchup will be for the TNA Knockouts Championship. This will be Awesome Kong versus Tara versus ODB. And I was really wishing that they would have had ODB lose the title on one of the Impacts leading up to this pay-per-view, so you could have got a singles match with Awesome Kong versus Tara, because it's kind of one of those dream women's matches that many people would want to see, and it would be a great match to have at Bound for Glory. Now, throwing ODB in the mix with them, I don't think it's going to really make the match terrible or anything, because I think, Tara, a.k.a. Victoria, and Awesome Kong, they're both such great workers that ODB's not going to really hurt the match too much, and as long as she's not involved within the match too much, and it's more of the match is Tara versus Awesome Kong, should be a good women's match, and I see ODB losing the championship and Tara becoming the new TNA Knockouts champion, and you'll probably see a one-on-one match with Awesome Kong versus Tara at the November TNA pay-per-view. Should be a good women's match. And then the next matchup will be for the TNA Tag Team Championships in a four-way Full Metal Mayhem match. It'll be Scott Steiner and Booker T defending the TNA Tag Team Championships against Beer Money, against British Invasion, and against Team 3D. And then if this was just a regular four-way match, this probably wouldn't be good at all. It would probably be god-awful. But with the Full Metal stipulation, and pretty much anything goes with these types of matches, and you can do a lot of good brawling, this probably might be a good match between these teams. Beer Money and Team 3D, they work pretty good against each other. British Invasion, I like Doug Williams a lot. Not much with Brutus Magnus, but they're an okay tag team. And Scott Steiner and Booker T, they're probably not going to do much in here. Obviously, many people know that this is probably the most likely, Scott Steiner and Booker T are going to lose this match. No matter who wins this match, the titles are going to change hands, because Booker T is, after his contract is up, is rumored to be going back to WWE. Scott Steiner isn't going to be re-signing with TNA, so don't know what he'll do. He'll probably just retire or something, or do something like what some older wrestlers do now. Autograph signing, conventions and stuff like that. He'll probably still do something within wrestling, but nowhere, on a actual active wrestling level. And like I said, with the stipulation, it should be pretty good. I see Beer Money winning the TNA Tag Team Championships. Then the next matchup will be, if the main event doesn't steal the show, this will be the one match that at least has potential to steal the show. And this is Suicide versus the Pope D'Angelo Dinero versus Daniels versus Homicide versus Amazing Red, and the Ultimate X match for the X Division Championship. Like I said, this has potential to be the show stealer. If the main event isn't match of the night, this will be match of the night most likely. All five are very good workers. Amazing Red's always entertaining to watch. Daniels and Homicide, they're great. And the Pope D'Angelo Dinero and Suicide, they have very good chemistry with each other from what they've done against each other so far in TNA. And all five of them are pretty much good workers, even though I don't like the Suicide gimmick. It is the one thing. Cass can never really get over by himself, but the gimmick got him over. So I guess, keep it going as long as you can, even though it's kind of questionable how much longer can they actually go with this character. But I guess they'll try to drag it out as long as they can, and it isn't as bad as what it once was. I really used to hate the character. Now I can at least tolerate the character to somewhat of some degree. But this should be a good match. I see, even though Amazing Red just recently won the X Division Championship, I see him losing in this match. I see Daniels becoming the new X Division Champion, and it should be a good match. Probably one of the top matches of the night on this pay-per-view. The next match will be the Dream Match. This is one match that many wrestling fans have been wanting for a long time. This is Mick Foley versus Abyss in a Monsters Ball Extreme Hardcore match with special guest referee Dr. Stevie. And this is something I've been wanting to see ever since Mick Foley came into TNA. Even before Mick Foley came into TNA, this is a match that many people wanted to see. This is like a hardcore dream match. These two should put on a very good, brutal, hardcore brawl, and it should be very good. You got the stipulation Monsters Ball. Now, you got the one thing involving that Abyss can't use thumbtacks, but thumbtacks will get used in this match some way or another. Dr. Stevie will get either taken out in this match or he'll be knocked down, and Abyss will use them then, or Mick Foley will use them, and Abyss will go through them. So, and it's really only Abyss can't use thumbtacks, I think. So I think Mick Foley can still use them. And with that, obviously, Abyss is going to go through them. This is probably going to be a very brutal match. I see Abyss winning this match and defeating Mick Foley. Kind of Mick Foley passing the torch, to the, guy of this generation that's kind of like the hardcore legend of this decade, passing the torch to Abyss. Should be a very brutal match. The next matchup will be Bobby Lashley versus Samoa Joe in a submission match. Now, originally this was titled MMA versus TNA submission match, but it's from a couple of wrestling news sources. It's saying that instead of having an MMA versus TNA submission match, they've just knocked off the MMA versus TNA thing and just called it a submission match, which is kind of a smart thing because it's really kind of stupid, having MMA versus TNA with the very predictable outcome of this match with Bobby Lashley going over. And if on this pay-per-view it's still billed MMA versus TNA, it's going to make your wrestling company look very bad. Bobby Lashley going over Samoa Joe. Even though Bobby Lashley is a contractual wrestler within TNA, he's still representing MMA, and Samoa Joe is representing the wrestling side. And it'll kind of look bad if MMA goes over on TNA. I don't know if Vince Russo noticed how stupid that looks, but other wrestling companies, WWE, they always do this at their big shows. They have celebrities come in and defeat wrestlers, so I guess it's kind of arguable that it'd be okay if it happens. And Bobby Lashley, I don't mind him at all, but I think this is one of those matches that possibly, might hurt Joe. It might hurt him even a little more because obviously Bobby Lashley's going over in this match unless they end the match in some bullshit outcome, which I don't see them doing at their biggest show at this pay-per-view, but I see Bobby Lashley going over. Probably should be an enjoyable match, though. Samoa Joe's a good mat wrestler, and Bobby Lashley has a background in collegiate wrestling, so with that, it should be a good match, I would say, with the submission stipulation. But even though it's submission stipulation, submission match, you're going to see a good portion of brawling at the beginning of the match to start it out, probably. Then the next matchup will be Kurt Angle versus Matt Morgan. This is built as Wrestling's Best versus Wrestling's Future. And even though this match, obviously, it will put over Matt Morgan and really put him over to a huge level within TNA if he does go over Kurt Angle. I just don't see it happening. I don't think he's ready for the next step and going to the main event and going for the world title quite yet. I see this match, Kurt Angle will win this match. He will defeat Matt Morgan, but it'll be one of those types of matches where the veteran or the more the wrestler has been wrestling the longer than the other one will kind of put over the younger star, and even though the younger star loses, he'll be put over as a star, and it should be a very good match. I'm not much of a fan of Matt Morgan, but Kurt Angle at TNA's biggest show, and he's such a great performer within the ring. I think Kurt Angle could pull out a good match with Matt Morgan, and possibly one of those matches that maybe showcases Matt Morgan, that maybe Matt Morgan has it. I haven't been sold on him quite yet, but maybe Kurt Angle can put him over to such a high level that he seems credible to maybe go to the next level. I just don't see it. I just think it's a little too early right now for Matt Morgan. Maybe a year down the line, but not quite yet. But should be a good match. And I see Kurt Angle maybe challenging the world champion at next month's pay-per-view for TNA. Then the main event is going to be Sting versus AJ Styles for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. And obviously going into this, you got Sting having the Shriek at Bound for Glory. He's been 3-0 at Bound for Glory. He hasn't lost at Bound for Glory yet. And if he wins here, it'd be the fourth time him going in Bound for Glory and walking out as champion. Hopefully it doesn't happen. Now, I don't think it's going to happen, but there is, there is a little thought back in the back of my head that Sting is going to walk out. But I think AJ will win this match. I think AJ will retain the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. He just won it. It'd be very dumb for Sting to go over AJ Styles and not put over the younger star. And if Sting goes over, I won't be really pissed, just as long as we get a good match. But it is going to hurt it a little bit if Sting goes over. I'm not going to lie. It will hurt this pay-per-view a little bit if Sting goes over. Hopefully AJ goes over, because with this pay-per-view, the card looks very good. It looks like this could deliver a great pay-per-view from TNA. And just as long as they have AJ Styles go over in the main event, defeat Sting, that will even add to the pay-per-view even more if AJ goes over, because it'd be really the first time at your Bound for Glory event that you have a homegrown talent go over, the ex-WCW, ex-WWE type star, and you actually have a homegrown talent finally go over. And hopefully it finally happens for this pay-per-view, because I feel this pay-per-view right here, whoever wins the main event, if AJ wins the main event, TNA, I think, has a future. I think they actually have a future. If Sting wins, their future is going to be a little questionable. I don't think they'll, go out of business in a year or something like that. But I think they'd be much safer as an organization if AJ goes over. And obviously, a lot of fans would really want AJ to go over Sting on here, even though Sting has a lot of fans. AJ does need to win this match, and if AJ wins this, it will really put him over as a top star within TNA, because he'll be the first one to defeat Sting at Bound for Glory. That would even add to him even more, and this match could really make AJ, a big star for the organization. Even though he's kind of like somewhat of the face of the organization, this match could really help him. I think it's going to be a great match between these two. They had a good match at TNA's Turning Point 2008. They had a good match there. It's kind of like a little teaser type match where they kind of held it back a little bit, but I think they're going to go full force in this match. I think you're going to get something great here, and hopefully it's a good pay-per-view from TNA, because on paper, I'm expecting a lot from this pay-per-view. I'm actually going as far as I'm actually going to purchase this pay-per-view from TNA. This is actually going to be the first TNA pay-per-view I'm actually going to purchase since Slammiversary 2008, which was in June of 2008, so it's almost been a year and a half since I've ordered a TNA pay-per-view, and this one looks like a very good pay-per-view from TNA on pay-per-view. Hopefully it delivers. We'll have to wait and see tomorrow, but yeah, that's it for my TNA Bound for Glory 2009 pay-per-view predictions. Peace.